Leadership Preparation Webinar Series, Building a Culture of High Quality Assessment of Learning, Part 1. The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement is comprised of an executive director reporting to the Assistant State Superintendent, coordinators for school improvement, academic improvement, and leadership development, as well as leadership specialists. Our office has three main goals: fostering the growth of effective leaders, ensuring valid and reliable evaluations, and raising the quality of education. We provide targeted professional learning experiences and resources to equip current and future leaders with the skills and knowledge required for successful school and district leadership. We oversee the development and implementation of Maryland's teacher and principal evaluation system. Training, guidance, and support is provided to local school systems in the implementation of fair and valid evaluations. Lastly, we provide customized professional learning experiences and support informed by data and grounded in effective practices to improve school performance. To earn continuing professional development credit, in order to receive 1 credit, you must view 5 webinars, including Part 1 and Part 2. Additionally, you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to receive 2 CPD credits, you must watch all the webinars in the series, including Part 1 and Part 2. Then you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include any pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to submit your materials, please complete the Google form found in the description below the video. Let's meet the presenter, Robert Sheffield, Director, Center for School Turnaround and Improvement at West Ed.
Please be sure to reference the Part 1 agenda and participant guide for this session. The participant guide offers space to collect notes and to respond to prompts within the webinar. In Part 1 of this session, you will learn foundational concepts to establish balanced, comprehensive assessment systems within your school. By the conclusion of Part 1, you will be able to articulate the purpose of a balanced, comprehensive assessment system for your school. You will also be able to identify and explain 4 different methods of assessment. In this session, we will address PEASL Standard 4, Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. This standard says that effective educational leaders develop and support intellectually rigorous and coherent systems of curriculum, instruction, and assessment to promote each student's academic success and well-being. The application of this learning is cross-cutting and is supportive of the additional PEASL standards listed on the slide. Before we move into the content of our webinar, please consider the learning target, the success criteria and standards, and take a moment to identify what you would hope to learn from Part 1 of this webinar. Let's jump into our warm-up for the webinar. When you think of the word assessment, what comes to mind? Let's take a minute to consider this question. You may write your response in the participant guide. My team and I have asked this question of teachers several times over the past few years. The word cloud displayed on the slide represents some of the words and feelings that we've heard as we've asked this question to teachers. Please take 30 seconds to read the words and track for any trends that you see. I hope that you are able to see that teachers hold a range of perspectives and emotions regarding the word assessment. It is critical for leaders to understand that assessment can be a challenging topic to address with our peers in classrooms. It is our responsibility to help teachers to understand the value of assessment and the role that it plays in improving the impact of our work with students. It is also our responsibility to ensure that teachers are aware of the different forms of assessment and how those forms of assessment can be utilized within their instructional practices. Let's start with some basic definitions. When used to describe a process, Assessment is the process of gathering evidence of student learning. Note the simplicity of this definition, as well as its emphasis on evidence. When used as an event, assessments are activities or materials used to elicit information from students about teaching and learning. Note within this definition an emphasis on activities or materials. What is key to remember here is that a deep understanding of assessment strengthens the ability to use data to inform decisions regarding instruction and student progress towards achieving the standards. Please keep this point in mind as we move through parts 1 and 2 of the webinar. This point serves as the why that explains the need for assessment leadership. Leaders are responsible for making key decisions that impact teaching and learning within schools. Leaders are asked to use data to inform and guide those decisions. Much of the data that we use to make decisions comes from the assessments that are used within our schools. Quality assessments that are used well produce good data. As we deepen our expertise as instructional leaders, we must learn how to build systems of assessment that produce high-quality information. A term to describe the type of expertise that I noted on the prior slide is assessment literacy. Assessment literacy is knowing how to accurately elicit evidence of student knowledge, skills, and abilities, and use interpretations of that evidence to improve student learning and program effectiveness. Mastering principles of sound assessment practice can deepen assessment literacy. It is my hope that by the conclusion of this webinar, parts 1 and 2, you will be able to walk away with a better understanding of assessment from a leader's perspective and foundational practices to build quality systems of assessment. Our next key term is assessment leadership. Assessment leadership is the capacity to enact a comprehensive, balanced system of assessment and support a culture of assessment literacy that can be used to collect evidence of student learning to produce equitable learning outcomes for all students. The concept of assessment leadership is not a new one, and in fact it can be found in education literature as far back as the 1990s. Even so, this aspect of instructional leadership has not typically been an area of focus in school leader preparation nor professional development. An assessment leader understands and clearly articulates a vision for assessment anchored in a knowledge of fundamental assessment literacy concepts. The assessment leader engages stakeholders to develop a complete picture of all assessments in place in order to evaluate and make decisions about a comprehensive and balanced local assessment system. Third, an assessment leader develops and implements a culture of assessment literacy in which a comprehensive, balanced system of assessment aligns to local equity goals. Before we begin to talk about systems of assessment, I would like to share 7 key principles about assessments. Assessments must be 1. Worth taking. 2. High quality. 3. Time limited. 4. Fair and supportive of fairness and equity in educational opportunity. 5. Fully transparent to students and parents. 6. Just one of multiple measures. 7. Tied to practices that improve learning. As you begin to work with teachers to design quality systems of assessment, please keep these principles in mind. They will help you and teachers to develop and use assessments that are worth students' time and the time that adults will take to analyze the data produced through these assessments. In this section, I will explain how your system of assessment functions as a subsystem within your school's system for teaching and learning. Before we start this section, I would like to take a moment to explain why we are looking at these topics through a systems perspective. It is a leader's responsibility to manage people and processes. The systems-minded leader organizes people and processes to produce outcomes. They think through the ideal interactions between the various stakeholders that they lead and the structures and routines needed to realize the organization's vision. The systems-minded leader also acknowledges that systems are complex, interrelated, and interdependent. Let's see how this works in a school. We are all aware that the purpose of a school is to educate students. Based upon that purpose, the core functions of a school focus on teaching and learning. So as we are establishing school-wide visions for learning, we must have an understanding of how the systems of curriculum, instruction, assessment, and enrichment interact to produce student results. Curriculum involves what you teach. Instruction, how we teach. Assessment lets us know the degree to which we were effective within our interactions with students. Enrichment allows us to extend student learning based upon what we have learned about how students responded to instruction. Each of these systems are important to a school's overall teaching and learning capacity. Each also serve the needs of stakeholders differently. Let's spend a moment considering who benefits from each system. Teachers are the primary beneficiaries of curriculum. Curriculum lets them know the what, when, and how of what they teach. Students are the primary beneficiaries of instruction and enrichment. Instruction and enrichment are the means by which they interact with teachers, peers, and tasks to develop new understanding and skills. You, as a school leader, are the primary beneficiary of the assessment system. This system produces the information that you will need to work with teachers in service of students. It is this system that produces the data that you will use to make decisions. As you move through your career, it may be this system and its data that determine whether you are viewed as an effective leader or possibly an ineffective leader. Here's our problem of practice in this area. With so many assessments and so much data available, are students, teachers, and leaders able to translate assessment data into improved learning outcomes? To do so, they need a system of assessment that is comprehensive and balanced, as well as time and a culture that supports using evidence of student learning for advancing equitable student outcomes. The absence of a system of assessment leads to overtesting and underutilization of information that is vital to our improvement efforts. So let's drill down into the assessment system for teaching and learning. As a leader is working with their peers to establish comprehensive systems of assessment, they must keep three critical ideas in mind. They must think about the purpose of assessment, the quality of assessments, and the balance of assessments used within their school. Part 1 of this webinar series will focus on purpose and balance. In Part 2, we will focus on quality. Effective assessment systems start with the understanding of the purpose of assessment. Leaders think about their intentions. Why do we need to assess our students? Leaders think about their desired outcomes. How does our assessment approach inform a current goal, focus, or priority? Finally, leaders think about the specifics. What kind of information do we want to know about our goal, focus, or priority? Leaders connect the purpose of assessment with the outcomes that they seek through the other parts of the teaching and learning system. For curriculum, does our curriculum provide tasks that elicit meaningful, transformative engagement for students? For instruction, do classroom interactions produce the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that we envision for students? For enrichment, do our programs and systems to extend learning beyond first instruction meet student needs and produce the impact that we desire? Now is the time for you to think about the purpose of assessment within your context. Please see the Activity 1 section of the participant guide and respond in the space provided. For this activity, we will look at the purpose of assessment through the lens of a school or school system goal, focus, or priority. Prior to starting this activity, you will need to identify a goal, focus, or priority. The first step of this activity will ask you to describe the purpose of assessment as it relates to the goal, focus, or priority that you selected. The second step asks for you to consider, to what degree are your assessments providing the information that you need? The third step asks, what are the unintended consequences of your use of assessment? Please take a few moments to consider these questions as it relates to the purpose of assessment within your school or school system. We now turn our attention to balance. We will develop our understanding of assessment balance by examining assessment methods and cycles. Effective assessment systems balance the methods of assessments used to collect evidence of student learning. Different methods of assessment provide different information on student progress and learning. Multiple factors must be considered to ensure that an assessment provides the information that we intend to collect. There are 4 common methods of assessment: formative assessment, interim or benchmark assessments, summative assessments, and screeners and diagnostics. It is important to have a firm understanding of the different methods of assessment. Different assessments play different roles in the teaching and learning process. You will also find that different methods of assessments measure for different grain sizes of information, and when used properly, allow educators to collect evidence along a student's continuum of learning. Now let us consider the slide animation to gain a better understanding of how this works for students. Students are represented on the left side of the image. As students move forward in their progression towards mastering standards, various assessment methods can be used to gather information about their learning. Formative assessment offers students the opportunity to receive real-time feedback on a small number of standards. This form of assessment has the greatest value for students because they are able to adjust their learning during instruction. Interim assessments measure clusters of standards and may be used to provide information to teachers and administrators about how students are progressing towards expectations for summative assessments. Standards-based summative assessments are typically end-of-year assessments like the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program. These assessments provide information on the student's annual progress towards proficiency and informs teachers and administrators of areas of strength and weakness within their teaching and learning systems. Assessments can typically be differentiated by 5 factors: purpose, timing and frequency, scale or grain size, feedback, and test conditions and flexibility. We will take a closer look at the assessment methods and how they can be differentiated by purpose, timing and frequency, grain size, and the type of feedback that they provide. Please see the assessment methods section of the participant guide. That section provides space for you to capture notes for each of the following slides. Formative assessment. The purpose of formative assessment is to gather information during learning to inform how to proceed with teaching. We also refer to this as assessment for learning. The timing is daily or weekly to be sure that we're able to collect information in real time. The grain size is based on small segments of learning. Feedback is timely and two-way between students and the teacher. It is a purposeful process and should not be considered as a test nor an event. For more information on formative assessment, please Google Formative Assessment for Maryland Educators. That search will lead you to the state's FAME resources. These publicly available tools and resources can be used to support the development of your assessment literacy and leadership. Interim and benchmark assessments. The purpose of these assessments is to provide ongoing feedback throughout the year, and they can be thought of as either assessments of or assessments for learning dependent upon goals. The timing of specific intervals takes place over the course of the entire year. The grain size is specific and based upon a smaller set of standards or targets. Feedback is typically short cycle, to a few days to a few weeks. The purpose of summative assessment is to evaluate multiple weeks, months, or years of learning. We commonly refer to this as assessment of learning. Summative assessments are typically high stakes and inform grades, our understanding of a student's annual yearly progress, as well as the college or career opportunities that they may be eligible for based upon their proficiency on the standards or competencies measured within the summative assessment. The time is infrequent and may occur at the end of a unit, semester, or year. The grain size is specific to the content mastered by those key points in time. Feedback is also infrequent and may not directly connect to a student's next steps for learning. Finally, screeners and diagnostic assessment. The purpose of these assessments is to inform decisions regarding needed interventions or placements for students. The timing tends to take place as needed, and these assessments are typically quick to administer and are often given at specific times of year. The grain size can vary, but generally focuses on a small set of skills. Feedback is timely and is normally used in conjunction with other measures of student understanding, learning, or dispositions. Let's take a different view of the assessment methods. Let's now look at them by cycle. It is important to consider the use of assessment by cycle as you plan for a year of instruction or a year of program implementation. Assessment cycles help us to operationalize assessment planning and administration, data collection and analysis, and feedback and improvement. As an instructional leader, you're responsible for this type of planning to ensure that you are collecting evidence of student learning and teacher practice at strategic points during the school year to inform your leadership actions. Among these actions will be those that support teacher professional learning and student enrichment after initial instruction. For our final activity of Part 1, please see the Assessment Cycles, Methods, and Uses document in your participant guide. The document provides a more detailed view of the assessment methods and cycles commonly used within schools, along with additional guidance to inform the use of specific methods within cycles. As you read the document, consider the following questions and write your responses in the appropriate section of the participant guide. Here are our 4 questions. Which assessment methods and cycles do teachers use most frequently in your school? Which assessment methods and cycles do teachers use least frequently in your school? Which assessment methods and cycles do leaders use most frequently to make decisions in your school? And the final question, which assessment methods and cycles do leaders use least frequently to make decisions in your school? This concludes Part 1 of this webinar series. In Part 2, we will discuss assessment as a driver to achieve equity. See you there.
The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement would like to thank you for participating in the Leadership Preparation virtual webinar series. We hope you found this particular webinar informative and beneficial to your work as you prepare as a leader. To access the webinar series and find additional resources, please visit the Maryland Resource Hub. The Maryland Resource Hub can be located at marylandresourcehub.com. That is MarylandResourcehub.com. We appreciate your feedback and would ask that you take a moment at this time to complete the SurveyMonkey link or use the QR code. The feedback that you provide to us will inform our work in the office as we develop additional resources to support you in the field. Again, thank you very much for your time in completing the feedback. As a reminder, the continuing professional development credits are available to you for this leadership preparation webinar series. To receive 1 credit, you will need to view 5 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience for the webinar. That would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar, and completing the participant's guide, as well as extension activities related to the webinar. To receive 2 CPD credits, you will watch all 10 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience per webinar. Again, it would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar and completing the participant's guide while watching, and extension activities related to the webinar. After you have completed the work, you will then submit all of the materials to the Google Form link listed. If you need to contact us with any questions for any reason at the Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement, you can contact Ed Mitzel, Executive Director, at edmund.mitzel@maryland.gov. That is edmund.mitzel@maryland.gov. Or Dr. Lori Ellis, Coordinator for Leadership Development, at lori.ellis@maryland.gov. That is lori.ellis@maryland.gov.